Welcome back, and this is part 3 of making a game of Pong with both visual scripting and C# for Unity. This is part of a series and is aimed at guiding anyone who's not sure which route to go, visual scripting or C#. So I do side-by-side comparisons between the two in different videos, so please be sure to check out the rest of this playlist, which is linked in the description. Okay, let's get started with this one. I want to refactor this. This is getting, it's very untidy. So I mentioned in the last video we can use something called super units. So let's get started with that. Okay, so with your script open, I want you to right click and search for super unit. And this is basically a visual scripting way of creating some reusable scripts. And I think you can think about this as the same as maybe being a different class if you compare it to C# or maybe even a method. Anyway, let's go into the super unit. So you double click it. The first time you double click, it'll zoom in, and then the second time we'll actually go in. So you'll see it has input and output, which will create input and output nodes on that super unit. So if I go back, and this is how you navigate, there's a little breadcrumb here at the top. So this is the current super unit that I'm on, and if I click on player 1, I don't have a title yet, so let's call this move pedal. Did I not save? I saved the wrong thing. Okay, so this is naming the actual script. And you see here I've accidentally named that, so I'll just call this move vertically. And okay, so I'm going back to the other script. And what we want is to take some of this logic out, and what I'm going to do is move this multiply, create and set velocity into this move vertically. So I'm going to select these three and Control X, cut, go back in here and paste it. So what do we need? We need some input here, because in the previous script we were passing in the move speed and the axis value, whether it's moving up or down and how fast it is. So we're going to pass those in as parameters. So let's go back and see how we do that. So in our super unit, we are going to data inputs. So see here on the left, scroll down a bit if you don't see it. Data inputs, and let's just click 1, and we are going to put the axis input value. You can put in a label and summary if you want. Type, I'm going to choose float because that's what our axis input value returns. And let's see what this did. So we've got this super unit. You see it's created this value here, axis input value. And if I go back to the other script, here where we have our super unit defined, or where we are calling our super unit or linking through to it, you'll see axis input value has been added in there. And what I can do now is link this together. So input vertical, I'm going to link it through to that and go back in. So there's the input value and there's the speed multiplier. I'm going to call it whatever I called it here. So move speed, I'm going to call it move speed in my super unit as well. So in the data inputs, I'm going to click on plus, and move speed is a float as well, which is a floating point number, a decimal. And something else we need is a trigger input, and a trigger input will create a flow input. So let me just show you what I mean. Trigger input, and I'm going to call this move. Okay, so you see it's created a flow, so I can go and link through to that, which ungrays out these other nodes. And we need to multiply. We need to multiply access input value, which I'm going to connect to A, and move speed to B. Good, and I think that's all we need to do on this one. Let's go back to our original script. Here now we can connect the flow. So it should flow from input get access to our super unit, move vertically. And the move speed, we need to connect to our move speed variable there. Let's test this out to player 1. So with player 1 selected, we can see it's moving into our super unit. If I double click in there, I can see the flow going in. So moving up and down, that seems to work fine. Great. Now we need to change it for player 2. So back in our original script, I can remove these 3 nodes, the multiply, create, and set velocity. I'm going to delete that completely. I'm going to duplicate this super unit call, and we can reuse the move speed variable, so connect that to the move speed. Our input get access for player 2, we will connect our flow nodes together, our flow ports together, and then the output for get access we will connect in there. And yeah, that's it. This looks a lot better. So I will show you what this looks like. Okay, so here we can see what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now, so that's a lot better. Now let's have a look at the C# side and see if we can do something a bit similar. Okay, I'm going to open up my C# scene, project, scenes, and C# scene. And I'm going to open up my move pedal script. So the way you reuse code in C#, there's different ways. One, you can move bits and pieces of your code into different classes. And another way is you can create methods. If the code you are using falls into the same class and does what it's supposed to do, you know, what the class is supposed to do and not more. So for example, you won't go and create a math functions inside this move pedal script. Okay, that will go into its own math class. Okay, so this is quite compact already, but I'll show you how you can reuse code inside C#. And a way is to use methods and functions. So I'm going to create a new method at the bottom. Void update is a method. Okay, and your methods are basically your actions that takes place inside your script, it's the actual meat of your code. Okay, it's what does the actual work. So I'm going to call it void. Don't worry about what void means. We are going to create a method and you can just give it a name. I'm going to call it move. The convention in C# is to start it off with the capital letter and then autocomplete it for me incorrectly. Okay, private means it can only be seen within this class, and don't worry about that too much. I'm going to remove it. Void move, and I'm going to use this move amount and put it over here. Okay, so move amount does not exist inside this method, so we need to create a parameter for that, and I'm going to call that float move amount. Although we have move amount over here, these are seen as two completely separate variables. This move amount only exists within update because it was created inside of this update method. And this move amount will only exist within move because it was created as a parameter here. And I'm going to pass in the rigid body as well. So you see, this is like a normal variable declaration, but put inside these brackets, it's called parameters. And these values are meant to be passed in from whoever is calling this method. And I'll show you exactly how to do that now. I'm just going to call this rigid body, give it a name. And perfect. Okay, so now in my update method, I can just call move. And that expects a float value. And we are going to use move amount. The variable name that gets passed in does not have to match. So I could have called this ABC, for example. Doesn't have to match. Okay, it just makes a lot more sense that they do. And I pass in the rigid body. And the same applies here. They don't need to match. I just called it that for consistency. And you can look at the code and see, okay, this is expecting a rigid body. Here's a rigid body. I'm passing that through. And yeah, I don't have to go and figure out what that variable actually means. And if I go back to Unity, this should still work. Okay, perfect. And that is how you create reusable code using methods in C# and using super units in visual scripting. If you have any more questions, please drop a comment and I will get back to you. I think in this example, it was probably easier to change the C# code. Although if I had moved it to a different class, then but still it wouldn't have been a lot more work. But Bolt on the other hand, or visual scripting, if I go back to my visual scripting scene, it was a bit more work creating the super unit and wiring everything up in there, creating all the input nodes, and then having to come back and rewire everything here. So yeah, I would say C# was definitely easier. So until the next lesson, enjoy. And if you guys have any questions, please drop a comment and I'll get back to you. Okay. Cheers.